This is the Comedy Kiosk, podcast by Mondae and Munoz. Please welcome Mondae and Munoz.
Hello and welcome to the Comedy Kiosk, where we discuss comedy news, events, ideas, and we do some quizzes and recommendations. I'm David Munoz and
Igor Mondae.
And let's get the topic started. So we're actually going to discuss today about being a comedian itself. So I think the first topic we're going to kind of get into is being a comedian a job? Can it be a job? Or is it just a calling? What do you think?
Well, I think it can pay as a job, but I'm not sure that I don't think it can be just a job. I know some people that are not very interesting or funny in real life. And I think on stage they might have a persona that is funny or like a character they developed.
Right, yeah.
But I think to be a comedian, you need to be more than just a stage performer. And you need to be more than just a character you've created. I think you need to be like an overall funny person. And that's why I think it's really hard to stop being a comedian once you step off stage. And I think that sometimes people like this, I would even be afraid for their mental health, to be honest. I would say that might be like some kind of borderline, like...
split personality?
Yeah. Because, I mean, if you can be hilarious on stage and then you get off stage and you're the most boring person to talk to, I'm curious, like, where does this humor come from? How do you write? How do you imagine these jokes?
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I kind of slightly disagree to this point. I think it can be a job initially. I don't think you have to be a naturally funny person to actually be a comedian to start with. I think you can choose that something you want to try. It is more difficult. Obviously, if you have some natural talent or something like that, it will help you a lot. Of course, it gives you that big running start. But it's almost like, well, imagine somebody who starts off as a fat kid or something like that and then decides they want to win the Mr. Universe competition. Well, it doesn't start with the Mr. Universe competition, but they will, work out. They'll start going to the gym. They'll build the exercise. They'll get the routines. They learn all the system, the methods or whatever, and diets and all the rest. And then eventually they'll be like, oh, wait, I can actually maybe even go for some bodybuilding competitions, using that as an example. I think comedy can kind of be the same, where someone can decide, you know what, I can give that a shot. It is going to be a lot more difficult, of course.
Yeah, but just to refer to that example, you wouldn't be a Miss Universe on stage, Mr. Universe? Bodybuilding one is the Olympia.
But they do have a Mr. Universe as well.
Yeah, but that's just about beauty. It's not about bodybuilding, whatever. But anyways, okay, you're a beautiful man or a woman, and you want to compete in these beauty pageants, but still, and then you get off stage, and like the first thing you go is McDonald's? No, I think you will keep eating healthy and living this lifestyle.
I completely agree. And this is where I think it eventually will bleed through. Like, as in, the funnier you start being on stage, the funnier you will be in person anyway, because it becomes a sort of just a natural part of your persona. Like, it will start bleeding back into it, if you know what I mean. It's a case of, because even those of us, okay, now I have the idea that even those of us that are naturally funny, or, someone told us we were funny and things like that, we weren't told that from the age of 1. We weren't told that from the age of 2. It happens much later. It's because we learn to do it, actually. It's just that we don't learn to do it on stage. We usually learn to do it in life. We learn that it's a way to, for example, impress people at a party. It's a way to attract someone of the opposite gender or the same gender. It's a way to attract somebody. It's a way to make yourself popular, things like that. And you learn it. You do learn it. You just don't realize that you're training at it. You're just doing it at parties. I know from me, for example, personal experience, I didn't start off naturally as the funny guy. Maybe at home I could make my parents laugh and stuff like that, but I wasn't...
So, 1 second. Let's get back to your personal experience in a moment. But I wanted to say, I don't think it's something... I think, yes, you learn how to be funny gradually in life, especially if you need this skill to be also interesting or attractive, or if you can sell it in some other way, if you're a good speaker and you can be a teacher or a salesperson, the bullshit what did you
bullshit artist
bullshit artist, exactly.
Yeah.
But I mean, I want to say that I think that once you start learning it, you cannot learn it only for stage. You become like this class clown.
Eventually, well,
you become the Joker. You just are funny.
Because I disagree, because I've seen some comedians be interviewed and they're kind of serious types. Like they really do separate the two. Like, I'm sure they still make funny quips and things like that, but they're not that obsessed with being the center of attention when they're off the stage. There are some people like that. I'm not saying they're the majority. I'm not saying it's even that large a portion. I'd probably say less than half. I'd probably say maybe a quarter or less of them are like that, because once you start getting on stage, the addiction, the center of attention, it is hard to switch off. But there are times when people are a bit more relaxed with it. Like the case in point I'm trying to make is Gene Wilder, the actor, Willy Wonka from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, from Blazing Saddles, from a lot of work with Richard Pryor. Now, the thing was, if you read his autobiography, he wasn't naturally a funny person. He got into it, being funny, was because his mother was sick and was really sick. I can't remember if it was something actually medical in the sense of physical or if it was more mental illness. I think it might have been a bit of both. But the point is that he did it to keep his mother happy. He was just finding ways to make her laugh and making her funny. So for him, it was like a job in a way. He was not naturally a funny kid. And when you read his autobiography, he's actually highly anxious. He's got high levels of anxiety. He's an introvert, 100%. He hates going in front of people and doing it. But he knows these skills and he's like, well, I'm going to use it. And it's going to also make me money. And at the same time, it's going to provide for my family and I'm going to work. So he was not naturally a funny guy, but he was hilarious when he switched it on. He knew how to switch it on. But in private life, he was apparently a very sweet, gentle, nice person who didn't like being the center of attention and would generally be quiet and just listen to people.
Yeah, but I mean, like these kind of people, I think they can do really well in comedy genres in different formats, like writing, right? If you are a genuinely funny person who just needs their own peace and quiet, and you can sit down, write a great hilarious script, and that's it. Or acting, because acting is always playing a character, right? You switch on this persona and now you're this persona and so on. But when it comes to stand-up, I think stand-up, first of all, I think it should be like genuine. So, I mean, like you are always kind of expressing some opinions, emotions, or trying to convey something to the audience that you also feel and believe. It's not just an act, otherwise you're going to be completely disconnected and the crowd is not going to fall for your jokes, because they will be like, why is this, I don't know, gay man talking about fucking all the women yesterday? We know he's gay. They're just not going to buy into it. But unless it's a character on stage, which then is very easy to sell, whatever. But what I'm trying to say is, all these combinations exist, but I think that, there are some people that I know personally. They're funny, they're witty, they are quick with a joke. In real life, when we talk, when we have a drink, when we banter, they've tried stand-up. I've seen them try stand-up and it doesn't work. So doing written material, doing prepared jokes, riffing it, playing it off the audience, reading the room and so on, they don't have and have never learned. I mean, when I say they try doing stand-up, I mean they did 1 5-minute spot in an open mic. They've done some even years of stand-up, let's call it like this. But it was never, it reached some level of quality and success, but it didn't go higher than that.
Wait, are you talking about me?
I'm not talking about you. I'm definitely not talking about you. Is this, are we recording? Is this on record?
Yeah, we're recording.
Okay.
You're on the record.
And then on the other hand, I know some people that are funny on stage and they kill with their material and so on when they prepare it well and so on. But then when I talk to them off stage, it's like a Dementor from Harry Potter, they just suck the life out of you because they're so boring and uninteresting, and I switch off in the first 3 seconds.
But that proves my point. They're funny on stage. They're actually good. In real life, though, they're a complete set. They've learned how to be funny. They've learned all these tricks, if you want to call it. Although they're not tricks. They're just, they've learned the methods. They've learned different stuff. but they are in real life. Their persona is not what you'd expect of a comedian. I mean, and there's another example where I gave of, for example, Dane Cook. He was once making this point of that. One thing that sucked about being a comedian was that people expected you to always be funny and be switched on. So he would meet a girl at a club, after a gig or whatever. Like, she'd obviously be impressed. You know, he's a good-looking guy, so they'd be like, "Yes, I want to go on a date with you," whatever. You know, after the club, they'd go for drinks. He's just performed. Now he's on his cool down, and they're talking. And he's like, the amount of times the girls would be like, "Oh, I thought you were funnier," because they expect them to be constantly riffing and making jokes and saying stuff. And to be honest, there are some comedians also who I think you would agree that they don't switch off. They're on stage, they get off stage, and it's almost like they're still performing, and eventually that gets tiresome.
Are you talking about me, David?
For the record, I would like to state that, Your Honor, I am not referring to Igor Mondae. For the record. But the point is, like, sometimes you don't feel like it. Sometimes you finish a set, or, you know, on days that you just like I'm not in the mood. Like, someone mentioned it to my wife, you know, a while back. They were like, "Oh, it must be, you know, really fun dating a guy who's a comedian," sort of thing, you know, before we were married, when we were just dating. And she was like, "Oh yeah, you know, it's lots of fun. He's constantly making me laugh." And she goes, "But there are days where he's just very quiet, and he'll basically go to the balcony and just hang out with himself. Like, as in, you know, I'd just be listening to music, smoking cigarettes, or thinking about work or whatever else. And, you know, it's switched off. I'm just not in a funny mood that day. I'm introverted."
That's what I'm talking about. And I think a lot of comics actually are introverted, because people ask me a lot, I'm an introvert. I like my, you know, space. I like to be alone. I like to, like, just relax from people, from social interaction, especially after I had like a hard show. When it's a good show, and you probably, like, you feed off the audience. Like, when there is a good energy in the room, it gets you going and you have more energy as well. But when it's a hard show, when you're giving energy, when you're trying to make them entertain, make them laugh, make them not regret coming here and so on, the next day I can be kind of like a vegetable, lying in my bed, turn on Netflix, do nothing, because it exhausts me emotionally and socially and so on. But what I'm saying is that I think that if you are like an entertainer, performer, comedian, sooner or later it will bleed into your personal life, because I don't see it being the other way, because I don't understand how we can, because when I see a guy being hilarious on stage, and then here's, or girl, and then here's but this is a guy I'm talking about, and then he's the most boring person imaginable. When he just steps off the stage, approaches you, and he's boring. My first idea is, where did you get those jokes? Because you're not a funny person. You know, like, maybe you're a brilliant writer and so on, but, you know, and that's why I think, like, but I do agree that this is something that people kind of, in a relationship, for example, as you mentioned, right? Okay, I'm this kind of person, and I felt like called out when you mentioned it. I'm like in a performer mode, comedian mode, 80% of the time. Yeah. Because when it's like a lighthearted conversation, of course, if you approach me and say, "Oh my God, something really, really like horrible, tragic happened to me today," I wouldn't start cracking jokes. I would have a serious conversation with you, or with my family, or with my girlfriend, and so on. But if we sit down for a drink, I'll keep joking, because it's like, it's who I am. But then when it comes to girls, for example, what I get is like first date or first few dates, it's like, "Oh my God, you are so funny. Like, I like talking to you. I like hanging out with you because you're so funny. You make me laugh constantly. This is amazing." 1 month in, do you ever stop joking?
Is everything danger?
Is everything a joke to you? You know, I'm like, yes, everything is a joke to me if it's a lighthearted conversation. If it's a serious conversation, then let's talk serious stuff. You know, like, if you want to tell me something that's bothering you, if you want to talk, like, you know, but if we're taking a stroll and we're looking at things around us, yes, everything is a joke to me. Doesn't matter, like, if it's an old granny falling, which I don't laugh at, for the record, again, but because I'm not 5. But, you know, anything that I observe, or anything that I can, you know, like, jump on with a quick joke, with a quick pun and so on, I will. Unless it's kind of inappropriate by the social context, or if I just want to have a genuine, like, heart-to-heart, deep, meaningful conversation, which I will not then spoil with cheap dick jokes.
Yeah, I think then the topic now is veering more towards when is it appropriate to make a joke and when is it not. But okay, but to go on from that, because now we're getting more into our personal experiences, maybe we can go into the how or why did you start the whole comedy, and who the hell told you were funny, and can we sue them?
Yeah, I don't think anyone actually told... Well, I mean, many people told me I'm funny, but I don't think anyone told me, you should do stand-up. Like, you're that, like, oh man, the jokes you crack in our, like, classroom or something, this is, Netflix level shit. Go and do stand-up. I don't think anyone actually told me something like this. What I remember is that I always enjoyed comedy, like some sort of comedy, like movies when I was younger, different, I don't know, cartoons, different whatever. I came across this like Pablo Francisco Comedy Central bit, maybe when I was 15, 16. It was like a big thing that people shared on CDs back in the day, can you imagine? So basically I got this clip of him. It was... I wouldn't even say that it's stand-up. It's like, it's definitely comedy, but it's something like, because he's acting out characters, voices. I don't know, have you seen or heard of Pablo Francisco? But it was like a one man on stage telling jokes. So it's kind of stand-up, but not straightforward stand-up, like guy with a mic talking.
Yeah.
And it really... Like, I watched it, I don't know, 100, 1,000 times, I don't know, because this was all before YouTube and Netflix and unlimited amount of comedy that you can find.
Yeah.
So I watched it a million times. Then I got into actual stand-up, saw some things like Jimmy Carr. Then I saw some other stuff like, what was the ventriloquist? Jeff Dunham, I guess, or something. Yeah. He became super popular due to this like skeleton Ahmed, and stuff like this. And I got really into comedy. I was like, and I was even thinking sometimes, like if I can't go to sleep, I'm like, what's funny? Like elephants are funny. Can there be a joke about this? I started like thinking about this kind of stuff, and then basically, but there was no comedy where I was at that point when I was, I don't know, like 19, 21, 23. Like there was no chance. There were no stand-up open mics. So back in Croatia, where I'm from, we then had comedy only in the capital, as far as I remember. And it was ran by kind of professionals who were like charging for shows and so on. They had open mics as well, but I would not travel for like a weekend to do a 5-minute spot or a 3-minute spot on the open mic or something like this. And then when I moved to Moscow, I started looking into comedy, and there were some open mics in Russian, like once or twice a week.
Did you try it in Russian?
No, I didn't. But this was like 7 or 8 years ago. And comedy here, it came to TV maybe 4 or 5 years ago. Yeah. And then it became like really, really a big thing that people know, and that people know what to expect and how it looks. Before that, it was like a underground thing. Yeah. A small group of people did, not to go crazy.
Yeah, I remember like the first couple of gigs that I did, and I think you guys had been doing it for like a year or something like that before I joined up, or a year or two. But it was like, we still had to like tell the crowd that they can laugh out loud. You don't save the applause until the end of the bit, like the whole thing. It was just like, this is not a theater production. I remember a couple of times we even had to tell them, this isn't, like the host would have to say, this is not a theater production. You don't have to respectfully be quiet, watch the whole performance, and then clap at the end like a nice, respectful audience. Like, this is stand-up comedy. Laugh out loud, slap the table if you're like, feel like it, bust a gut. But yeah, that was I remember that.
As long as you don't bust a nut.
Well,
if someone's really funny, go for it. Comedy extravaganza. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and then I found there was a show of Dara O'Brien as a part of like Irish Culture Week Festival, something in Moscow. And that was the first live like stand-up show I've seen. And I was like, and I really liked, because that was a very funny show, because he came to do his show he was touring with, but it turned out that everyone here knows it because they pirated it. and he was like, what the fuck? I didn't like release that in Russia, like that DVD and so on. How do you know that? And then he was like, you fucking pirates. Right? So then he was like, okay, what do I do now? Because literally my whole, like, my whole, like, show. And he just started, like, he went on a break and he came back and did 45 minutes of mostly crowd work and banter and stuff like this. And I was like, I always enjoy this, like, when it's a conversation and I can banter with someone and, I can add on something, build up to like a laugh or whatever. Yeah. And I was like, I really want to do this. And then it just popped up on my Facebook one day, like an event English open mic in Moscow. And I was like, okay, I'm going. I got my colleagues from work, 2 other foreigners, and we went to see it a few times. And then I decided, okay, I'll try this. Like it's been like a long time coming. And I will try this. I prepared like 5 minutes of material. I didn't tell my friends or colleagues that I'm going. I showed up by myself. I asked, like, can I get a spot? I asked some guys that were already performing then, and some of them still perform today, for some advice, like how should I open? But the scene was very new. I think it existed maybe 2 or 3 months before I joined. So they were not that, they were not in the position to give advice, but they did help with like structuring a bit, with some preparation.
I'm sure it didn't stop a couple of them from giving you advice, though, as if they were seasoned pros, and you're sitting there going, what are you on about? You've been doing it for like 2 months. Now, let me tell you, the things that I've learned.
And to this day.
To this
it
day.
It doesn't stop them. And that's the thing. And then I went on stage. I did like maybe 7 minutes. But the thing is, there were not many comics then. And you could kind of do whatever you want. There was not like structured organization, and so on. So I did it maybe 7 or 8 minutes. I got laughs where I wanted them, where I kind of prepared the punchline, what I then thought was a punchline, and so on. And I got off stage and I felt like happy. I felt excited. I felt like I've done the job, right? So that I was supposed to do. And I was like, okay, so this was Friday. There is an open mic tomorrow. I'm going tomorrow. There is an open mic on Sunday. I'm going on Sunday. And since then, if I'm in the city and if there is a show I can go to, I go to, and that's it. Like,
as a performer.
Sometimes, like, there were some shows where I just decided that I didn't prepare well enough, or I have nothing interesting to say, or maybe the lineup is already full, and so on. And I would go as an audience member, because I think it's also interesting to see it from the side. But and that's I think that's maybe how most people start, by thinking that they might be good at it, trying and seeing that they are good at it. I don't know, what was your first experience?
Okay, so let's start with the build-up then. So as a kid, I was shy. I was one of those like little boys who's behind mum's legs.
You started this story like way earlier than I expected.
So that was me by nature, right? But I never had a problem doing public speaking.
What about your grandfather? Was he a funny man?
I never met him.
Father?
Yeah, my dad was. He loved, like, we both watched like voraciously. We watched every Mel Brooks film. Loved that. He was the guy who, because also English was his second language, for example, we watched Monty Python, and at first my dad didn't like Monty Python. He was just like, I don't get it. Like, this is just stupid humor. Because at that point, the level of English and figuring out what it was. And it was really weird because at one point, like, we didn't watch Monty Python growing up or things like that, because it was just like, this is just stupid, absurd humor. And then it wasn't until one day, I remember I came back from university, he was watching Monty Python and laughing his ass off, because obviously his English had improved, and he was like, oh, yeah.
Now I get it.
Now I'm getting it. Like, he's like, damn, they're actually really smart, and they're really putting a lot of like thought into criticizing and analyzing, and they're kind of making a satire, and he's like, damn, these guys are geniuses. And I was like, what happened to them being just dumbass, basic, absurdist humor? But anyway,
I like how I asked this question just to see how far can you go in explaining why you became a stand-up comedian. But actually, it opened up an interesting topic, because it opens up a question like, is it something that we can get from our like family and from our genetics, maybe even? Because I would say that my father is also a very funny person, and he always liked to crack jokes and do like practical jokes on people, or when there was a conversation, he was always the funny one that like cracks jokes constantly and makes everyone laugh at some social gathering, I don't know, like wedding, funeral, whatever.
That's what brings me to the point. So, we watched Ben Hill, and my dad asked me a lot about, okay, so what is that phrasing? What is this phrasing? And he's like, okay, what happens if you said it like this? So my dad was kind of deconstructing jokes and things like that from me having to explain, okay, so that means that. And he's like, well, okay, why are people laughing now? Especially when there was a laugh track. Or something like, if there was a live audience, even better, because then, it's definitely laugh worthy. And he's like, why is that funny? Like, am I missing something in the translation? Like, as in my head. And we would kind of deconstruct it, analyze it. And he's like, oh, because it has this meaning and that meaning. Oh, yeah. And he's like, yeah, okay, that's good. Well done. And then we would use it like at the kitchen table, like, over lunch and stuff like that. We'd watch comedy films. We'd crack it. I would learn whole movies off by heart, like the whole thing. And in a way that was sort of practice. And this is what I mean. Like, it was already sort of semi-training. But still, I was a shy guy around other people. I wasn't that sort of style. And it wasn't until, I would say, probably when I was in high school, I wanted to be the funny guy, but there were funnier people. Guys who were already, like, way funnier than I was.
Established comedians.
Yeah, in a way, yeah.
Did you go to school with, like, Seinfeld? You're like,
no, just Jim Gaffigan and Ricky Gervais, just a couple of those guys.
Shut up, Jerry.
yeah. What's the deal with the... Shut up! And never say, what's the deal? People are going to assume that's what you always say, but you never actually say it. But shut up, Jerry.
Those people are older than you, right?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
I think. Anyway. Actually, no, I think... Yeah, they are. But the point is that... so anyway, I wasn't the funny guy, but occasionally would say one or two things, every so often. And if I could get a laugh from them, if I could take the attention away from them and get people to laugh at my thing, then I knew it was genuinely funny. Because they were the stars, not me. And then I was at university, and at that point, I was, once again quiet. I didn't swear. I was a very nice guy and all the rest. But every so often, once in a blue moon, I would say something that was wildly inappropriate, funny or something like that. And the first time it started clicking a little bit was I never thought anyone ever saw me as the funny guy until one day I said some off-the-cuff remark that shocked the people in the room. Got like that kind of laughter where like I shouldn't be laughing, but damn, that was funny. And my friend, whose nickname is Veggie, he started cracking up laughing and goes, that's why I love hanging out with this guy. And they looked at him and he was like, man, he's hilarious. And he's like, he cracks me up because he just doesn't do it that often. But when he does, he's like, he's quiet. But the moment he opens his mouth and something good comes out, it just kills the room. And I was like, wait. He sees me as the funny guy. Like, what? And that was sort of like the first moments there. And then another big moment for me was when I was smoking wacky weedus with a couple of friends. It was one of the first few times that I had done that. And there was a joke, a St. Peter's joke, right? Which is already a long joke in and of itself. And it's one of those with a twist ending that's sort of obvious, but it's the kind of build. It's like almost a Shaggy Dog story, almost. But anyway, Shaggy Dog story, by the way, for the listener, is a story that looks like it's going one direction, and then there is no real punchline, or it's just ridiculous. And the whole point is it's more about the story. And that's what happened was because I was stoned at the time, I was trying to tell this joke. But when I told the joke, what was normally like a 10-minute joke, 5 to 10 minute joke, normally, actually it's about a 5-minute joke, I extended it for 20 minutes. And I was doing character voices. I was doing all these like in-jokes inside it. I was making references to other things. And even under that condition, I was focused so much on the story because I had the general outline. I was able to embellish around it that by the time I finished, everyone knew what the punchline was because it was obvious. And they were like, but the whole setup was just genuinely hilarious. I had them cracking up every so often. So much to the point that the next time we all got together and there was some new people there, the guy who I was smoking with all of a sudden was like, oh, Dave, do the St. Peter joke. Do the St. Peter joke. I think I ended up doing it like 3 or 4 times. It was like, technically my first stand-up was with a group here. Every time we got stoned, someone always asked me to do the St. Peter bit. And it was a 20-minute, and people would be like listening, and they'd be like, "My God, how long is this joke?" But they wouldn't stop listening. They couldn't break their eyes away from me. And that was the first moment that I realized, wait, I can actually tell a really good story, like entertaining story with funny bits in it. And that was the first moment that I started thinking about it. And that's what kind of got me into stand-up. Was one night I had a dinner party with some friends, and we ended up. I was just telling stories because by then at parties and things like that, I'd just gotten better at learning how to tell good stories and how to get people engaged and people would just listen. And so I was able to do this, and this impressed girls, and this made me like, all that sort of thing. And like, this is what I was saying before about it trains. You are training, you are practicing stand-up without realizing you're practicing stand-up. But that's what I was doing. I have spent years technically doing stand-up, all in the vain attempt of trying to get laid or getting myself popular or, noticed or not being the quiet guy. So anyway, I was at a dinner party. I was just telling stories, had everyone cracked up. And one of the guys at the dinner table was a guy I just met that night. He was the boyfriend of the housemate of my friend who had invited me, one of those, off-tangent things. And afterwards, he got my email address from my friend, like from his girlfriend to ask my friend for my email address. And then he was a circus performer, well, still is, as far as I know. But he also, as a side thing, he also did these magazine launch events. And so, and every month they launch their issue. So there was always like a big night out sort of thing with all a bunch of events and a whole bunch of different acts and stuff like that. And he said to me, Dave, would you like to try it? And at that point, it's the bucket list. Yes, I wanted to have done stand-up. And I thought, okay, let's give it a shot. And I asked him, all right, so when is it? And he's like, it's in 2 weeks. And I was like, okay, cool. And then he was like, and I said, oh, how long? And he said, 30 minutes. So my first ever gig was a 30-minute gig that I had to write for. And that was my first ever gig.
So it wasn't like an open mic at a comedy club or something. It was a corporate event
sort
or something.
Yeah.
And you were booked to do a 30-minute spot.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. So that's how that was my first ever gig. And it wasn't until I came to Moscow that same thing as you actually, on Facebook, there's this thing going English stand-up, and I was like, all right. And I went there with my then girlfriend. I posited to her, let's go see some stand-up, because I had not done it at all since the first time, and it'd been a few years before. So I was like, damn, I need to, I want to give it a shot, see what these guys are like, because I'd honestly given up on the idea of ever doing it. I wanted to, I wish I could, but I lived in a small town in Australia. Well, it wasn't a small town, it was a medium largest town, but it was the university town. And the closest place that had an open mic spots probably would have been Brisbane, which was a 3-hour plane, flight away. It's like, no way I'm going to get there and do this every freaking weekend. So it was impossible. And when I just gave up, like when I came to Russia, and then all of a sudden to see English stand up, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. I'm not a person of destiny or fate, but honestly, if I was, I'd be like, oh, this is a sign. This is totally a sign. I'm meant to be a stand-up comedian. Put me on the stage, God. I'm ready. So, yeah.
Oh, wow, you were really ready. I wasn't that ready, but I was willing to give it a go.
Yeah, same. And then I did it, and yeah.
So from all of this, from your experience and so on, if people are trying to get into comedy or into stand-up and so on, what would be like what would you say was your biggest mistake? What was your biggest maybe lesson learned? And what would you recommend, like how and when and why to start doing stand-up?
Okay. Biggest regret. That's easy, actually. Biggest regret was after that first stand-up gig, about a year later or something like that, I was at a bar, happened to have drinks, met some random there, this guy. We start chatting. Turns out in that town, there was a casino, right?
Oh, no, it was Jerry Seinfeld.
No, there was a casino.
Stop it, Jerry, I told you.
Jesus, are you following me from high school, man? But yeah, so there's a casino there, and this guy was like, I was telling him that I'd done this stand-up once, and it went pretty well, like as in I told him the whole story, which is a story in of itself. And he was like, well, would you like to do like shows at the casino? And I was like, yes. And he gave me his card. But you know that part where you're like, oh no, it was just one time, I don't know, I could do this like regular. What happens if he wants me to do it every week? And I got scared, and it took me a month and a half or 2 months to build up the courage. And I was like, right, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Let's do this. Where's the card? Where's the card? Where did I put the card? No, I swear I put it on the table. It was next to the speakers. Nope.
Wait,
I lost the fucking
your
card.
Advice for anyone who wants to start doing comedy
do it.
Is if someone offers you a regular paid gig, don't lose their business card.
Yeah.
That's your
Yeah, just quickly say yes, and that's the thing I've learned. Take the opportunities. Don't turn it down, especially at the beginning. At the beginning, don't be fussy. Don't care. It's just corporate gig. Like, you know, Anyway, I won't mention that. But like, you know, whatever it is, just take it because that first experience is invaluable. And the other thing I would say is there is no set standard way of doing it. Just say yes and give it a shot. Mm-hmm. Just have that attitude, just like, what the hell? Because think of it as everything is a bucket list. Like, just tick it off your list. If you like it, you keep going with it. If you don't, then you're like, okay, I won't do that anymore, you know? Like, if someone had said to me, like, all right, Dave, we want you to do a stand-up set on a porn film, and you'll be constantly on this, it'd be like, this could ruin my reputation. Yeah, stuff it, let's do it. You know what I mean? Like, unless it's something that could totally ruin you, but yeah, just say yes.
What is a stand-up set in a porn? Okay, never mind. But yeah, I think an important thing would be, because I see this, because I'm doing it now for 6 years, and I see people come and go, and some stay and some don't, and so on. And I think the real filter happens when the person needs to decide, is it a fun little thing they do once a week for 5 minutes to be the cool guy or girl in front of their colleagues or the people in the audience or something, or is it something they really want to do, they're meant to do, they're good at, and they can push and take to another level? I think this is something that you can figure out like on the way, on the road, but I think it's also something you should know and understand maybe better even before you start, because I think that just to kind of dabble and to, you know, do it, yeah, sure, come to like 1 or 2 open mics, see, is it for you or something. But then if you start asking for real spots, if you start like taking up the time of other comics organizers, in some cities like spots are paid, like you have to pay to perform and things like this, or come like 2 hours earlier to sign up on the list and so on. Don't waste your own like time and money if you're not, even if it's like a silly little joke for you. I mean, I
disagree, actually. I'm going to disagree with you on this, because same thing, my perception of things changed. It's changed quite a few times, where one moment it's a full-on focus, other times it's just a side thing that I do for fun. It can change. And sometimes it's a bit of both. It can be multiple things. And the thing is, it's not about taking some time. I mean, if you're not good at it, the people won't put you on the slot. You know, that's kind of the idea.
Well, no, I don't mean in the sense that don't waste my time, man. I mean in the sense of like, you should kind of know how far do you want to take it, and what are your own, you know, reasons of doing it.
Yeah, but that can change. This is what I'm saying. That can change, because when I first started, I was doing it. I only performed when I was inspired. You know, it's like when I have a new bit and I've worked on it a bit, and then so I did it maybe once every 3 months. That when I first started, I probably did it like 2 or 3 times in the first month or so, 2 months, and then it was almost like every 3 months for a while there. It seemed that's when I was going to. There was other factors as well that were impeding on me, but it wasn't. That was the way I started, and then I, you know, took a break because I moved to a different city where there wasn't a big scene, and I was still finding my way in that city. And then when I came back is when I started taking it more serious, because my opinion had changed. I had missed it, and I realized, no, I really want to do this. Like, I don't want this just to be a side thing. I want this to be a main thing. This is like a hobby that keeps me sane. I realized that this was the thing that made me happy and gave me that sense of fulfillment. And that's when I came back and I started doing it. And you guys kept, because also had a lack of comedians at that time. You were like, next Friday and next Friday and the next Friday. But that forced me to push. And I was really grateful for that. So, and then my things changed. And now, once again, due to circumstance, I can't do it as often. But if I could, I would. Because it's now more of an integral thing.
But that's the thing. I think you need to know yourself, first of all, because I think you personally are like a natural born performer. You're like an entertainer. I mean, I see you outside of comedy, like we kind of hang out, we're friends, whatever. Yeah. So when there is a group of people, you're the one telling the story. You're the one people are watching. You're the one. So you're like the storyteller, the entertainer. I'm the class clown. I'll be like cracking some silly jokes and so on. Yeah. I think like, so even if we don't have a stage and a spotlight, we'll still do comedy.
So basically what you're saying is I tell the stories and you punch them up with little quips.
What I'm saying is you tell stories and I tell jokes. That's what I'm saying. But the thing is, I think like a lot of people, and I've seen this like from like first-hand experience, that people think like, okay, you know what? I'm single and my evenings are free. I'll go and do some comedy. I think I'm kind of funny, and I'll pick up some girls, and it can last for a week or a month or a year or whatever. But in the end, it doesn't mount up to anything.
No, but at the same time, I don't think that should be discouraged. I'm just like, yeah, it's like a bucket list. Give it a shot. Who cares? It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think kind of what we're talking about, and that's what we started, and I think that's what we can finish on, was like comedy. Is it like a thing you do in life for fun, or is it like something you want to turn into your profession, your job? And that's what I'm saying. Like, if you just want to, if you want to try, like, I've recently tried squash. I've never thought I'm going to be like a squash player or professional squash player, and I don't plan on going on tournaments or competing and so on. But I saw a video of it, and I was like, this is super interesting. So I went and I tried, and I like it, and like once a month or twice a month, I go and play squash. Yeah. That's fine. That's perfectly fine. I don't have to be a professional squash player. Exactly. That's what I'm saying about comedy. If you want to sometimes come up on stage, improve your communication skills, public speaking, body language, whatever, go for it, do it. Yeah. But if we're talking about comedy as a calling, as a profession, as a career, potentially career, then you should know, like, why are you doing it? Yeah. What's your like strategy of doing it? And you know, like, that, to make sure then that you're not wasting your time or someone else's time or money and so on, because these things can actually be any hobby or whatever can be actually even pricey, and you know, like,
of course it can be, but I mean, I would agree to a point, but at the same time, if you just want to do it for fun, I mean, it is your time and it is your money, and if you're willing to just use it for a fun hobby like squash, like if you decide that every morning I want to go to the squash court and, you know, play an hour and I'm going to pay for it, that's fine. As long as you know, I say just give it a shot and do it as much as you want to do it, you feel like doing it, but be aware that if you do want to make a career out of it, or you do want to take it seriously, then you're going to have to sacrifice something else probably. Yeah. Things.
But I will tell you one thing, and I think we can finish on this. As an organizer and as an audience member, when I play squash for fun, first of all, there are no people spending their time watching how shit I am, and the club is not giving me a free hour to practice. So I pay to be there to fulfill my own like passion or need or whatever. Yeah. And when it comes to this, I hope everyone expects to have some audience, and they expect to be like on a nice stage in a good club and so on. So if you are just there to fulfill some personal void or whatever, but you know from the get-go that it's not going anywhere and that you're not going to take it seriously, then like pick your battles and just do like open mics.
Yes,
and
exactly.
Whatever. And
I'm saying that there are formats for that then. Yeah. All right, and I think we can do the whole organizing thing some other time.
Yeah, sounds like a good topic for another day.
Yeah.
Okay, so staying on the topic, let's do a short quiz and test each other's knowledge on us personally and on maybe some big stars as well and their life in comedy. So my first question is actually about a famous comedian.
Oh, okay.
Who's answered, and this is like a quote I really like, because for me this is what describes a life of a comedian. Okay. So one of his jokes, but I've heard him say this in interviews as well as a real thing that describes his life. When he was asked, what would you be if you weren't a comedian? He said, I'd be a virgin. So you know, like it's a joke, but to me it describes the way the comedians are. I think
why they get into it.
No, not why they get into it, but I think like if you're not a comedian, what are you left with? Like if I stop being a comedian today, if I'm stripped off, not just performing regularly, but I mean the jokes, the idea of this, the thing that it carries with. Yeah. What am I left with? So I'm just someone that's not interesting to anyone. So who was it? What do you think?
Oh, someone who would still be a virgin. I'm gonna guess a guy.
A guy.
Yeah. Oh, what's his name? Aziz Ansari?
It is not Aziz, no.
No, not Aziz? Okay. Freak. Well, that was my guess, was Aziz.
It was, I think it was a pretty solid guess.
Yeah.
But the comedian in question was Jimmy Carr. And it's one of his one-liners, but then I've heard him in an interview talk about this and say that he always felt like he should be doing this.
Yeah,
That's his calling.
And that's like his defining trait. So in a way, when we were talking before, in a way what you're saying is you can be a comedian without performing on stage then, because... Yeah. I'm not saying you need a stage and a spotlight to be a comedian, but I'm saying that you are a comedian or you're not. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay. All right. My question then, considering the previous topic about origins, what year was my first performance? What year do you think? Can you figure it out?
Well, I can use my deduction skills,
Yes.
Watson. And I know you said it was before you came to Moscow. You came to Moscow, let's say 2015?
2013.
13. Okay,
Yeah.
well, that's helpful. Thanks for helping me.
Yep.
And that was before that. And I think you said you were cracking jokes with your university mates and stuff when you were like smoking pot and telling stories. And then after that, you got invited to do the corporate gig. So I'm going to say somewhere between your uni years and your Moscow years, you are like 76 years old. So you graduated maybe 2006 or something.
No, higher than that.
Oh, okay.
Later.
All right. So, okay, let me just say that your first gig was 2009.
Very close, 2010.
Okay.
My first gig was to that, and I had to look at my emails to find the original email that James had sent to me for the invite.
Did you find that business card as well? Like, oh no!
No! Still haven't found it, man. Yeah.
Okay, well, if we're asking personal questions, and I think you might know this one because you might have been there, but I'm not sure. But you also might know it from people that told you. But if you don't know it, you can also try to guess.
Okay.
So, what was the most unusual gig I did?
Oh.
The most unusual.
The most unusual gig.
I've done some weird shows. I mean, weird, like different shows in different places and reasons.
Yeah.
But this one was very unusual.
Yeah, because usually you just hear about the good gigs, like, we had an awesome gig here, that was really great. But I'm going to guess it was outside Moscow.
I can help you out a bit and say it was in Moscow.
Oh, okay, damn. All right, maybe you were hired to do some sort of weird party or something.
No, actually, it was one of the gigs that was like a regular weekly show organized by us. But some uncontrollable circumstances made it quite peculiar.
Okay, I'm going to guess it was weird guests or something, like a whole bunch of strippers came or something to watch your show.
Actually, there was something similar to that as well, but that is not the one I'm referring to.
Okay, I give up. What is it?
So we were doing a show in a venue, in a bar, and maybe 10 minutes in, the water pipe burst, and it started flooding. And at first we thought, like, it first started like dripping, so we were like, okay, we just put a bucket. But at some point it just started like proper pouring out of the pipe, and it kind of filled the venue in 2 minutes up to your knees.
Jesus.
So we evacuated the place, and it was like, I think late October. It was cold-ish, but people still had their drinks and stuff because it was so sudden. So we all stayed on the terrace of this place, and then we just said, like, maybe let's finish the show here. And around like 40 people we had at the show, like in the bar, maybe like 25 to 30s were still there, and they were like, sure, why not? So we just stood on a terrace. Two of us turned on our like flashlight on the phone, pointed at the comic, so he's like in the light. Cool. We picked up like a knife or something to act as a microphone, so you just have something to hold there. And there were people who just kind of came together, standing there on this little terrace, like 25 people or something, and each comic did their 5 or 7 or whatever, and we finished the show like this.
Well done, well done. Nothing will stop the show. The show must go on, as they say.
Exactly.
What month was it in?
It was late October.
Ooh, so it would have been quite chilly too.
Yeah, luckily it was one of the warmer years in Moscow, and I think it was maybe plus 12 or something, plus 14. So it wasn't like freezing cold, but it was
practically summer in Moscow.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. Okay, so I've predominantly performed in Moscow, but I have done a gig or two outside of Moscow. How many shows have I done outside of Moscow in total?
We're talking... Each gig is a separate gig, or you talk counting cities or whatever?
No, separate gigs.
Separate gigs. I know you've done a full-length show in, I want to say, what was it, Izhevsk or something like this?
Okay, well, you get bonus points. All I want is the number, but you get bonus points if you get the cities, right? Okay, so continue.
All right. And then I know that you've done a few in Spain. but
Continue.
how many in particular, I'm not sure. And I know now that you've done some in Australia as well. So I want to say, let's say you've done 2 in Spain and 1 there and 1 there, but you also done other cities of Moscow, because we went on a few trips and tours together.
Right.
So you've done Ryazan, you've done St. Petersburg. So I think you did, when we were in St. Petersburg, I think you did 2 shows on that weekend, or maybe 1 because it was a festival. And then you've done Ryazan, and then, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 gigs outside of Moscow.
Ooh, very close actually. 8. But you actually got your numbers slightly wrong. So I did the 2 in St. Petersburg, right? I've done, I think, Ryazan twice.
Oh,
and
right.
Voronezh once.
All right.
Yeah, I did Irkutsk. That was the full show. I did Townsville in Australia, and I did Madrid once.
Oh, I see.
So I believe altogether that's 8, if I'm counting correctly.
Well, I was, with all my answers, I always miss by 1. So
Yeah.
next time you ask me a question, I will add +1 or -1 to whatever I want to say.
Exactly. Well, good idea. All right. All right, so considering the topic that we have today, is there anything in particular you would recommend?
I would definitely recommend The Big Sick. I know it's a movie that actually was nominated for an Oscar, but I think it went under the radar and not a lot of people are familiar with it, being like an independent film.
Yeah.
But I think it's a great movie that shows this life of a comedian versus some kind of family traditions and customs versus relationship, being like struggling to make it, doing another job. He's an Uber driver who then moonlights
Yeah.
as a comic in the evenings and trying to make it big. And you can actually see it's not what the movie is really about, and I won't spoil any more details, but you can see some moments where comics gather in the backstage or the green room or whatever, and they try to workshop some jokes or comment on some other people perform and so on. And when I watched it, I was like, yeah, this is how it is. This is what happens. And the writer and the main star of this movie, being a stand-up comic himself for many years, I'm sure he knows this very well from the inside. And that's why I think it shows this duality of life when you're a comic, when you have to deal with some serious things and so on. And actually there is in that movie some moments that are pretty kind of heavy and so on. And him being able to crack jokes and make people laugh really lightens up the mood and makes it bearable to go through these moments. So I think it also shows this human side of a comedian.
Yeah, and it's based on a true story. Like it's actually his and his wife's life, and they wrote the script together and everything. So kudos to both of them, and yeah, it's really well done actually. Yeah, I completely agree. It's a great film, and the fact that it's called The Big Sick is sort of a giveaway.
Yeah, and what about you?
For me, okay, so it's not about the topic of a stand-up comedian as such, but it's a movie talking about that. The reason why I think, for example, The Big Sick is really well done and so brilliant because it's based on a true story. It's genuine, but it has, if you took away the comedy, it would still be a good film, right? And I think, for example, I like The Invention of Lying by Ricky Gervais, right? And what I like about it is because it has his belief system, I suppose, in it. And, what he thinks, it's coming from a genuine place of his thoughts and stuff like that. And I think it's a very funny movie, though, because, and it, like The Big Sick, it went really under the radar, probably because of the subject matter, because he is criticizing the belief of God and religion and the whole thing. But it does have a really cool twist where I won't reveal it, but it has a really cool idea of how everything goes kind of haywire for him. And he ends up doing what he doesn't want to do. But anyway, the whole point is that it's a very great film. It's got like a really cool thematic theme sort of thing, like a point to it. And I think that's another thing that comedy needs. It needs that genuineness and it needs kind of that point. I think really good stand-up does that. You can do quick little simple punchlines and things like that, but what separates a good club comedian, 5-minute comedian, 10-minute comedian compared to someone who can do stadiums and arenas, you need to have a point. And that is something that Ricky Gervais is really good at doing, is making a point.
I think this movie is very well written and it has both things. It has the right premise, the setting to get you interested, like the idea, the concept. but it does have the message and the meaning. Like it has real like core of this movie is not this premise that from the title itself, the invention of lying can be recognized. It's a man who invents lying in a world where no one can tell a lie, everyone tells the truth. But then at some point it becomes more than that, and it becomes a story about how a simple lie or a series of lies can basically create a belief system, let's call it like that.
Yeah, exactly. All right, I think that will be enough for today's topics, and you've been listening to the Comedy Kiosk. I'm David Munoz.
I've been Igor Mondae.
And we hope to see you, hear from you, you respond, and I hope you hear us soon.
We hope you will hear us again. That's what we're trying to say.
Yeah.
Thank you and goodbye.
Goodbye.